All right, so going from that idea of a concentration gradient where substrate or solute molecules in a solution will move from an area of highly concentrated space to an area of low concentration in the absence of other forces, we call that being passively transported. Passive referring to no energy needed. This is just what's going to happen when there is no energy or force put onto a system, a living system. Like the cell, we use the cell membrane as an example of concentration gradient, high on one side, low on the other, and substrate molecules can sometimes passively transport through the cell membrane. So passive transport means ultimately no energy being used to move molecules across a membrane specifically. So now, instead of just talking about this very general term of concentration gradient, the movement of molecules from an area of high to low concentration, now we're going to focus solely on applying it to the cell membrane, the plasma membrane, if you will. And when molecules move across the plasma membrane from an area of high to low concentration and there's no energy put in, we call that passive transport. And ultimately, the specific kind of passive transport, because there are kinds of passive transport, we call it diffusion, or the spreading out of molecules from an area of high to low concentration. So some molecules can just naturally, with no energy needed, diffuse from an area of high to low concentration right through the cell membrane and into the cell. Let's use this example down here of a balloon in water. Now the balloon represents our cell, and there's a 20% salt solution in the balloon. That means that 20% of the liquid within the balloon is salt and the other 80% is water. And on the outside, that water is 5% salt and 95% water. So the outside of the bag, the outside environment here, has 95% water. The inside of the bag only has 80% water. So there's a higher concentration outside than inside. So the water is going to be passively transported out of, we're talking about salt molecules. Water will in fact go straight into the cell, the balloon in this example, because there's 95% outside the bag, the balloon, and 80% in the balloon. So 95 is higher than 80, so that's an area of high to low concentration. Now if we talk about salt, which our example was talking about, 20% salt solution in the bag compared to 5 outside the bag, that means that there's more salt inside the bag or the balloon, meaning that salt is going to diffuse out of our balloon, moving from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. Now, specifically, when we talk about the movement of water, which I got a little ahead of myself on the last slide, when we talk about the movement of water from an area of high to low concentration across a membrane, like our balloon represents here, we call it osmosis. So osmosis is the movement of water across a membrane from an area of high to low concentration. Notice the definition of concentration gradient and diffusion is mixed into the definition of osmosis because it is diffusion. It is a form of passive transport, but specifically it's water, so we call it something different. We call it osmosis. So let's look at this example again. I kind of gave it away in the last slide. 20% salt in the bag means 80% water in the bag or balloon. 5% salt outside, meaning 95% salt outside. Greater concentration of water outside the bag. So that means that water is going to flow in to our bag, our balloon, if you will. Water flows in from an area where it is concentrated at 95% to an area where it is concentrated only at 80%, from high to low concentration. That is osmosis. Remember, osmosis talks specifically about water. You would never say this molecule is undergoing osmosis. You would say a molecule is diffusing. But if you talk about water, you say osmosis. Now, ultimately, we've been talking about solutions here, water-based solutions, because your cells live in water-based solutions. there are three types of water solutions. We have isotonic, hypertonic, and hypotonic. All of these referring to a specific concentration of water. And what I want you to think about is your incredible shrinking egg lab, right? We are putting our egg, which represents the cell, in these types of environments. We're going to put it in an isotonic solution, a hypertonic solution, and a hypotonic solution. And in the following slides, we're going to see what happens to cells when they're put in these solutions, and how osmosis affects the cell's homeostasis. And the same is going to happen to our egg in our lab. Catch you in the next one.